ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, He knows what is before them and behind them, although they do not comprehend Him in their knowledge. Today, inshallah, I want to talk about the issue of what our duties are and what we are supposed to be doing during the period of the occultation or the ghaibah of the awaited Imam Mahdi ajallah. And according to our teachings and according to our religion, Imam Mahdi has had two periods of occultation. There was the minor occultation, the minor ghaibah, which lasted 69 years, 69 lunar years. And then we have the major occultation, which is when the Imam went into his second period of occultation up until this very present day. Now, during the minor occultation, the very first one, Imam al-Mahdi was able to communicate to the followers of him, to the Shia of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, through four main deputies or representatives. However, during this current period of ghaibah, of occultation, us as Shias, as followers of the madhab of the Ahlul Bayt and of the awaited Imam, must refer to our scholars, our ulama and maraja, for any advice on religious needs and religious matters that we require the answers to. And in order to try and understand this concept of ghaibah much better than I can describe it, there are some books which are recommended to be read in order to enlighten you on this topic and to give you knowledge. The most important of which are Al-Nu'mani's book, which is called Al-Ghaibah, and the book by Sheikh Al-Tusi, which is called Kitab Al-Ghaibah. Both are available obviously in Arabic and in English as well. You can find them online or you can buy them from bookstores. Now, one of the main things I want to touch on is one of the statements of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, who says that one of the best worships, one of the best forms of ibadah which a believer, which a mu'min can have, is to have anticipation for the reappearance of the awaited Imam. But before I discuss this further, I just want to go over the reasons why Imam Mahdi went into occultation in the first place. Now, our ulama have told us very clearly that all of the reasons and all of the secrets for the reasons why the Imam went into occultation are not known. We do not know all of the reasons and all of the ways and the methods which caused the Imam to go into occultation in the first place. However, they have told us from certain riwayat and ahadith that we have that there are a few things that we can pick out and give as answers. The first and most important is to try and test the believers, to try and test the mu'mineen. On all of our Islamic sources, testing the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and choosing which of them is righteous and which of them stays on the correct path is one of the things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly does throughout the history of mankind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always tests and puts trials and tribulations on the mu'mineen in order to see which of them is best. As we know, our life and the life of all of our ancestors that came before us as well passed through the time of the Ahlul Bayt, and even before this as well, life for everybody is a test to work out who is the pious ones, who is the ones who have faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the people who do have this faith use this time, use the life that they have in this world to try and nurture their faith, to gain taqwa, to gain humility, and to perfect their spirituality. And Imam al-Mahdi going into occultation is just a means to test us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the Imam go into occultation as a means for us to be without the Imam, to see how we cope. If you compare it to people during the lifetimes of Imam Mahdi before he was in occultation, or any of the other 11 Imams, they lived under Imam. They had an Imam to guide them. If they needed answers, they were able to go and question them. Therefore, life was, in some ways, slightly easier for them. And now, when our Imam is in al-ghaibah and he is in occultation, it is more difficult for us because we do not have the direct access to the Imam. And as a result of this, you'll see that, and as you have seen over time, certain people who do not have this strong belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their faith in Islam diminishes and gets smaller. They begin to have doubts which creep into their hearts. They begin to have uncertainty which comes to them because they don't have this strong faith, because they don't have the trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this appearance and reappearance of the Imam will come soon. In fact, one of the hadiths by Imam Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salam clearly expresses to us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places ghaiba and occultation of the Imam as a test solely for the believers to see how they will cope. And the other narrations we have also declare that testing people through occultation and ghaiba is one of the most difficult tasks for the believers. There's a very long hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentions this very issue, and in this he says, as a prophecy and as a foretelling of what is going to happen, he says that Al-Mahdi shall disappear from the sight of the Shia and his followers, and nobody shall stay stable on their belief except those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put their hearts on the path of faith and made it worthy. Meaning that during this period of occultation, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon us, is telling us that a lot of people will go astray because they do not have the Imam in front of them. But this doesn't mean that everyone will go astray, because some people have the trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have tawakkul. They acknowledge the Imam of their time and the people who represent him as well. The second reason why Imam Mahdi went into occultation, according to the scholars, is so that he will be free from giving bay'ah to an illegitimate ruler. Our Imam, as we have been told, will not accept or recognize any government which commits oppression or dhulm. He doesn't need to perform taqiyya for any king or any oppressive ruler, and he will not live under the flag of any oppressive ruler as well. The reason for this is that when he comes forward and when the dhuhr occurs, he will perform the rulings which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded for us with no compromise, with no secrecy, with no hesitation. In other words, he will be in occultation until he rises, and therefore he will be free from having to give bay'ah to any oppressive government or leader. And the third and the most simple explanation for why Imam Mahdi went into occultation is purely because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed it for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, go into occultation, and the Imam followed. And this is the easiest explanation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will is based on His infinite wisdom, the wisdom which we will never be able to comprehend. Therefore, the dhuhr and the reappearance of Imam al-Mahdi depends on the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides that it's time for the Imam to come, then He will send him to us as a blessing. And inshallah, this is something which occurs in our lifetimes. But as I mentioned before, Imam Ali alayhi salam says that we should constantly be in a state of anticipation and have intidhar for the Imam. Now, one of the companions of the Ahlul Bayt by the name of Hassan ibn Jahm said, I went to Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam, and I asked him a question about the dhuhr of Imam al-Mahdi. And Imam Musa ibn Ja'far replies back to him and says, do you not know that intidhar is part of the reappearance? Having anticipation and waiting for the reappearance of the Imam, this is part of his dhuhr. This is one of the stages for him coming back. The companion says to the Imam, I wouldn't have known this until you had told me. And the Imam says to him again, yes, you waiting for the Imam and getting ready for him is one of the first stages for the Imam coming back. Now, what is the lesson that we should take from this? The Imam doesn't tell us this thing twice for no reason. The Imam tells us this because he doesn't want us to forget about the Imam and get on with our daily lives. Meaning that only when we come every Thursday for a majlis and someone mentions Imam al-Mahdi's name, we say, oh, I remember now, Imam al-Mahdi's in occultation. It should be the opposite of this. We should constantly be in a state of trying to hasten his reappearance. One of the practical tips and the ways we can do this is given to us by Ayatollah Bahjat, who says that every morning we should start the day with saying Salaam Alayk Ya Imam al-Mahdi. Initially starting your day with the remembrance of the Imam, so that throughout the day you will be in this constant remembrance and your actions will be a reflection of this as well. Now we mentioned intidar, the concept of anticipation or waiting. But does this just mean to wait without doing anything or trying to improve ourselves or trying to improve our societies? No, this is the opposite. To give you an example which is relevant to this concept of the Imam being in occultation and us waiting for him, imagine that one of your family members or your friends goes on holiday or he goes to study, for example, in another country. Whilst this relative or friend is away in a different place where you can't see them, you're constantly in your heart longing to see him. You're waiting for the time in which they come back. But during this time, you do not simply forget that this person exists. You do not put them out of your mind. Every day you do things to try and bring you closer to them, meaning you will speak to them on their phone, on WhatsApp, you will text them, you will prepare the house and prepare maybe a party for when they come home, meaning that every day you are trying to keep in contact with this person. So why do we do this for our relatives and our friends, but we don't do it for Imam Mahdi? Why is it that he's just a thought that we think about maybe every few days? We do not do anything really meaningful. We do not read certain du'as or read certain books which will help us understand him. What I'm trying to say is that intidar or waiting doesn't mean just thinking that the Imam will come and therefore I'll get on with my life. No. When we know he's going to come back, we need to prepare for him to come back so that he will be happy when he returns. We don't want the Imam to be sad when he returns. We need to create a system for him. Waiting for the Imam or intidar does not mean that we just let the affairs in our communities and our societies get worse and worse and worse without doing anything about it. No, it means we should actively take part in trying to put things which are wrong right, and doing what we can to fix any issues within our own communities and circles so that these people as well as us can also be ready for the reappearance of the Imam. If our concept of intidar and waiting is really based on our belief in the Imam, then we will try our very best to reform our own behaviours, to fix any of the sins or vices which we carry out day to day. Because we don't want the Imam to come back and for him to see us in this state of constantly sinning. And we want it to be the case that when he reappears, he will be happy and pleased to see us and to see that we have made a change in our devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one who is truly waiting for the Imam is the one who feels the presence of the Imam at all times, and he lives his life in a way in which he feels the Imam would be happy with him living it. Now this should be as a reminder. Let me give you this. When you go home tonight, think about what you can do on the car journey to make Imam Mahdi and ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala happy with you. Meaning, don't play music when you are driving home in the car. Don't do ghiba when you are driving home in the car. Instead, put on dua. Put on dua zaman al-ghiba, for example, or listen to a muhadara, or at least on the very tip of your tongue, send your salams and send your remembrance to Imam Mahdi. Now, some of the questions we have, especially from the kids and the young people, is why can we not see Imam Mahdi? Why is he hiding? Why is he in waiting for us? Why are we not able to interact with the Imam? And even some adults come to us and they say this. They come to the scholars, the ulama, and they say, why are we not able to see Imam Mahdi? If we were able to see him, then we would, be so much more happier and our lives would change. But I don't agree with this. And I ask you, do you think that if you see Imam Mahdi today, it will make a change in the lives of most people? I would say perhaps not. Why? Because people like Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, they saw the Imam of their time. Did it change their behavior? No. When you have Yazid and Muawiyah and all of their followers, they saw the Imam of their time. Did their behavior change? No. You have Al-Mansur, you have Al-Mutawakkil, you have Harun al-Rashid. All these people and their followers saw the Imam of their time, yet their behaviors were that of the shaitan. And they did not adhere to what the Imam wanted from them. So what makes us think that we are so high in faith that when Imam Mahdi comes back, we will be instantly of his followers? Not until we perfect ourselves in our religion will we even be close to being considered as one of the companions or the Sahaba of Imam Al-Mahdi. Seeing the Imam is useless, it is meaningless unless we know the Imam. Meaning, we know his qualities, we know about his legitimacy, we are able to understand what his life has been like and the proofs, for example, of how he is the Imam. Our narrations, our riwayat tell us, if it were not for the sins of our Shia, then they would see us with their own eyes, meaning that our sins flood us in water. And that water means that we are drowning in a path which we cannot see the beauty of the Ahlul Bayt in front of us. And God forbid, when Imam Mahdi comes, we do not want to be of these people who are so full of sins that we cannot even connect with the Imam. So when people say, why is Imam al-Mahdi absent? Why is he not here? This is incorrect. The question we should ask ourselves is, why are we absent from the Imam? Why are we not here and why are we not ready for the reappearance of the Imam? We also need to have knowledge. We need to have ma'rifah. As I mentioned the other week, seeking knowledge is extremely important. And for example, in this case, if we talk about the knowledge that we should have of the Prophet, this means that we should study the seerah of the Prophet, we should understand his claim of nubuwwah, of prophethood, his aims, his teachings, what he achieved in his life. And one of the most important duties of the Shia, according to the ahadith of the A'imma, is to know the Imam of your time. What does this mean? Does it mean that we know Imam al-Mahdi was born on the 15th of Sha'ban, or that he had 4 representatives? No, this is not enough. The Imams from the first Imam, even back from Rasulullah up until the last Imam, have declared to us that you must know the Imam of your time. Meaning, you should not just know the historical information about them. No. The reality of knowing the Imam is not just knowing the historical facts about him. Because even the non-Shia, even the non-Muslims, know about the history of Imam al-Mahdi. Coincidentally, today marks the anniversary, the martyrdom anniversary of Shaheed Sayyid Muhammad Sadiq al-Sadr. May Allah be pleased with him. And what he tells us in one of his narrations, in one of his lectures, is he tells us that within the American government, for example, they have specific people and departments who dedicate all of their time to researching Al-Imam al-Mahdi. Shaheed Sadr tells us this. And some people laughed at him when he said that, and they said, this is nonsense. This is just an old man saying these things without any proof behind it. Well, alhamdulillah. We had Joe Biden, the last president of the United States. One day he's given a speech in front of a lot of different people, and it's on video. You can go on YouTube and watch it just now. Joe Biden comes, and in his speech he says, I do not know much about Islam, and I did not know much about the hidden Imam. And so I hired a professor for him to teach me about it. Meaning, Joe Biden, the President of the United States of America, hires somebody to teach him about Imam al-Mahdi. So when we look back and people laugh at Shaheed al-Sadr for saying all of these things, why? This comes true before our own eyes. In the present day, we have the followers, and in fact the highest ranking followers of the shaitan openly telling us that they are studying Imam al-Mahdi. But where is our Shabab? They're not studying Imam al-Mahdi. Why? Because America is studying him and our Shabab are not doing it. For the parents who have children, push them to learn about Imam al-Mahdi. Because when he comes, you don't want them to be of the people who do not know which path they are going to go down, and ultimately they go down the path of the ones who are against the Imam, of the shaitan. And so we need to understand the life of the Imam, his family, his qualities. How can we know that he is the Imam? What is the proof? How can we prove his imamah? How can we do all of these things? And the reason why we need to do this is because if we do not know this, then we do not know the Imam. And as our Imams tell us, the person who does not know the Imam of his time dies the death of a Jahil. To finish, I'll just tell a story which sums up this issue very well. And it's from Marhum Ayatollah Mahmoud al-Sistani, who is the brother of Sayyid Ali Sistani, and he's talking in this story about his father, who is Sayyid Muhammad Baqir Sistani. And he tells us that during his lifetime, he was one of the great scholars in the city of Mashhad in Iran. And he tells us that he made a pledge, he made a promise, that he's going to read Ziyarat Ashura for 40 weeks in a row in various different masajid, in various different mosques. And his intention of reading it every week for 40 weeks is that he can meet Imam Mahdi before he dies. And he tells us that during the 40th week, meaning the very last week of him reciting Ziyarat Ashura, he was in a masjid. And as he's finishing off the dua, as he's finishing off the ziyarah, he notices from the door of the masjid that there is a light coming from a house opposite the mosque. And he says that this light is different from any type of light I've ever seen before in my life. It is not something which I can describe with my own tongue. And so he finishes quickly reading the ziyarah, and he says salam to the people in the mosque, and he rushes out towards this house. He wants to go and see where this light is coming from and what is causing it. But when he arrives at the house, he notices that there are people outside and inside crying, sobbing, wailing with tears. And he realizes that somebody had passed away and that they are in this house at this very moment in time. So he's curious. He passes his condolences on to the people outside, and he goes inside the house, giving his salams to the people who are present. Once he gets into the middle of the house, he notices that there is a table. Lying on it is the covered body of a deceased person. Now he knows that this person has just died because they are getting ready to perform the funeral rituals and then ultimately the funeral prayer and the janazah for that person. They're covered with a white sheet. It was clear then that this person has recently passed away. So he's looking around and he spots somebody sitting in the corner of the room. And he tells us that this person resembles no other human being that he had ever seen before in his lifetime. And ultimately he comes to the conclusion that this person sitting in the room is Imam Mahdi. Sayyid Mahmoud Sistani is the only person in the room who recognizes that this figure who is sitting there is Imam Mahdi. What does Sayyid do? He goes over and he greets him with absolute shock and awe. This is the Imam of his time who he is greeting. And Imam Mahdi kindly greets him back with love and affection and beauty and joy. Then Imam Mahdi begins to speak very quietly to him so that nobody else in the room can hear. Now remember what Sayyid Mahmoud Sistani's pledge and promise was, what I mentioned at the start. He is going to read Ziyarat Ashura in different mosques in Mashhad for 40 weeks in a row so that he can get to meet Imam Mahdi. Imam Mahdi replies back to him, "It is not necessary. You do not need to make promises or pledges to meet me. If you are a true mu'min, if you are a true believer, then you will meet me just like this deceased lady." And he points to the body in the middle of the room. Now Sayyid Mahmoud Sistani is a bit confused. The Imam senses it and he replies to him and he explains what is going on with this deceased lady. He says during the lifetime of this lady, she lived during the time of the Shah of Iran. And as a result, during that time period, there was a ban on the hijab. Meaning that if you were a lady and you were walking in the streets of Iran, whether it be Tehran, Mashhad, wherever, you were not allowed to wear the chador, abaya or the hijab. The Imam says, during this time period, that lady did not leave her house for 7 whole years so that she would be able to wear the hijab of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. She did not leave the house for 7 years to maintain the hijab of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, and the Imam says now that she has passed away because of the way she lived her life, we have come to visit her and we have come to her funeral. We have come to give her a farewell before she ascends up to heaven. This is something which we should take as a lesson to us. If we live our lives in such a way where we have no fear of the shaitan and his influence, and when we hold on to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, then we have nothing to fear. And inshallah Imam al-Mahdi will come to our funerals. And to finish, I just want to remind you of something incredible. When we say that we want to be part of the 313 companions, soldiers, servants of Imam Al-Mahdi, only by perfecting ourselves can we be part of this. Only by removing all of our sins, whether they are big sins or whether they are small sins, will we be capable of even being considered to be one of the servants of Imam Al-Mahdi. Al-Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam tells us that if the supporters and the followers of Imam Al-Mahdi encountered an army which stretched from the entire east up until the entire west, then they would be able to crush them in just a moment. And the weapons that these enemies have would never have any impact or effect on them. And this is something which we can take from the Holy Quran itself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Holy Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, how many times has a small force overcame a large army and defeated a mighty army by the will of Allah. And Allah is always with the steadfast. And inshallah we are among the steadfast as well. And for all the mu'mineen and mazlumeen, and for all the shuhada, please recite Surah Al-Fatiha after salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.